Well, are you ready?
Yeah?
Okay. I'll introduce the podcast real quick, and
Okay.
then I'll let you introduce yourself, and
Okay.
when you do that, you can talk to the camera.
What do I have to tell? What is my name? What, yeah. Okay, I'll go with that.
Who you are, where, why, how.
My parents made me.
But a short introduction, because then we'll talk more
Okay.
about you. So, hey everybody, I'm Jim Schneider, and this is my video podcast, Work in Progress, where I talk to my friends about the work they do and why they do it. And my guest today is...
I'm Paula Sousa. I'm from Brazil. I'm a dancer and choreographer, now living in Chicago.
So we're going to talk about dancing and choreography and Brazil and Chicago and some
Yeah.
other places. And you're the first dancer I've talked to, a choreographer. So I wrote down some questions to ask. I didn't want to be unprepared. But this is a basic one. So how did you get started dancing?
My mom says I always wanted to dance. Since I was a little kid, I always said I want to be a ballerina, but I started with gymnastics. So I started doing gymnastics, and then I'm from a small town in Minas, and then the teacher stopped giving classes. So then that's when I changed to dance. I was more or less 8, 9 years old.
Yeah, what a lucky thing for you, right? That the teacher quit.
It was really lucky because I am quite tall for gymnastics, and I loved it. So yeah, I think I was really, really lucky.
So you
Otherwise, I would suffer so much.
Yeah. So you started about 8?
Yeah, about 8, 9 years old. Yeah.
Okay. And with like what kind of dancing?
So I started doing ballet and jazz. Those were the two first, and then throughout the years, I also went to contemporary and tap dance. So I was doing like everything the dance academy would offer, I would do.
So what is your training background aside from studying those? Where else have you studied, or what?
So from my town, that's really small, I did all those classes for years until I was more or less 14. And then I saw that the level wasn't going higher anymore. So then I started taking classes in the neighbor town. So I would go twice a week to the neighbor town and spend all my afternoons there taking classes that they were more like professional classes. And then from that, I applied to go to the Bolshoi school. They have only one Bolshoi school outside of Russia, that it's in Brazil, Politica. It's politics, that's why it's in Brazil. And so then I went to Bolshoi, and then from Bolshoi, I went to Austria, and I did my dance university in Austria. Those were my studies.
Okay, like the University of Vienna?
No, it was in Salzburg.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And where is the Bolshoi in Brazil? Is that Sao
It's
Paulo?
in Joinville. It's in the south of Brazil. It's a small town, and it started off connections because there was this politician who was also Russian, and he had connections, so it's why that started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, lucky thing for you, right?
Yeah, it was good.
That must be a challenge.
It was a challenge. It was a really new thing for me because it was very strict, very like Russian technique, and like everything was so different. And it was like every day we would be there doing classes, and most of the teachers they were Russian, and they barely spoke Portuguese. So yeah, it was interesting. It was I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was interesting. Yeah.
But you didn't have to speak any Russian, right?
No.
Okay, you
Just
spoke
Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Yes. Yeah, I know a couple of words like хорошо, да, нет, basics.
I know da and yet. I don't know the first two.
Хорошо, it's like very good.
Oh, okay. Хорошо.
Хорошо.
Did you ever hear that, like as a compliment?
Yeah, a couple of
practice?
times, not much, but a couple of times.
Хорошо.
Yeah. Хорошо.
But well, you speak a few languages. Speaking of
I do
language.
speak a few languages, Portuguese, hopefully English. I speak a little bit of Italian because I did live in Venice in Italy, a little bit of German because of Austria, and now living in Chicago, I also speak a little bit of Spanish.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And is that, knowing Portuguese as a first language, right, does that make Spanish easier, or?
I feel it makes it harder, as is the same as I would say when I was in Italy, because there are some similarities. They, like Spanish speakers, or in that case Italian speakers, they can understand if you speak some words in Portuguese. So I feel it's harder to learn. Because sometimes you say half. It's why I don't say I speak Spanish. I speak Portuñol, which is Portuguese with Spanish accent.
Okay.
Because they can understand some words, so I say half right and half wrong.
So you
but they
can
can
kind
understand.
You can skate by without really
which is
knowing
bad.
it. Okay. And when you lived in Italy, that was for work or more study? Or?
It was for work. After I finished my university in Austria, I applied to be part of the Biennale di Venezia, Arsenale della Danza. So I got invited to be part of that. So then that's why. So I was working for Biennale di Venezia.
So Brazil, Austria, Italy. Back to Brazil, right?
Yeah. Then I was like, I went back to Brazil because my contract in Venice ended. And then I was searching for a new job. And then I went to Brazil for Christmas. And then there was this company in São Paulo that they had an audition. And a friend of mine from Bolshoi, he worked there. And was like, oh, I think you should apply. I think the choreographer will love you. And then I wasn't sure I really wanted to stay in Europe. But I applied for the audition. It was like the audition was 2 days after New Year's Eve. So I did the audition, and then they approved me. And then it was like the audition ended on Friday, and then we should start working on Monday. So then I just went, and I stayed there for 5 years.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, it was an amazing company. It's called Projeto Moviola. The choreographer is Alex Soares. And yeah, I really loved working with him, yeah.
And then in that time, you met your husband, is that right?
No.
Your soon-to-be husband?
No.
Not in those 5 years?
No. Then after that, I applied, I worked in Curitiba, in the State Theater in Curitiba. Because like I really loved working in this company in São Paulo, but we worked mainly with grants from the government. So it was like ups and downs with work. And then this state company opened an audition in the south of Brazil. And then I applied. I didn't really want to go, but they had like salary and all the benefits.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, that was like waiting. So I applied and I got the job. So I moved to Curitiba, and that's where I met Pete.
Ah, okay.
My husband from Chicago.
Yeah.
That lived in Brazil.
Right. And how long have you been in Chicago, in the U.S.?
It's been 2 years now.
Okay. How do you feel about it?
Well, I'm settling in. I think I enjoy living in here. I do feel the dance world is the thing that it's most different from what it was in Brazil. So for me, it's the hardest one to get in.
Oh, like it's hard to get into the dance world?
To understand how it works, like how it works, it's really different. I thought in Brazil it was hard to get grants and government money and being paid to be an artist. But I realize here it's harder. So yeah, I think that's the hardest part.
And so when did you start choreographing?
I started choreographing when I was still in Salzburg, like as a project in the university. I did a couple of works there. Then when I moved to São Paulo, I did a duet with a friend of mine that worked with me in that company that we performed in Portugal also. And then like it was always slowly, I was always mainly a dancer and would choreograph in occasions. I really started doing that during pandemic, because then like when pandemic came, I was like, oh, that's a thing to do. So I started doing videos, and then also in the company I worked in Curitiba, we started with projects of dancers choreographing for the company as we were in lockdown. And so then that's when I really started doing it.
Is it a difficult transition going from dancing, someone else's ideas to choreographing?
Yeah, I think it's very different. We used to say, because sometimes people think like, oh, if you're a really good dancer, you're going to be automatically a good choreographer,
Yeah.
or other way around, the same as a teacher, and it's not what it happens. I do feel the difference. It's like once I started, I think because I started choreographing after I danced so much, I also understood like working with different choreographers, what I liked and what I didn't like in their approach, or I thought it worked also as a final result or not. And that's what I try to apply when I'm choreographing. I feel the difference that when you are a dancer, you are expected until a certain point, because you have to deliver that as a dancer. But when you are choreographing, you are expected to deliver the whole thing. The whole thing has to be good.
Right.
Not like if you're a dancer and one dancer like doesn't do something right or something, you can still manage that. But as a choreographer, if you fail, you fail.
And so naturally you said you're responsible for the whole thing,
For
right?
the whole thing.
But that includes dance. Does that also include music and costume?
The dance, the music, the
set?
costume. Of course, like depending for who you are choreographing, they have the person that will make the costume, the lighting. Normally you have that, but it's your idea. So you
Right.
have the main idea, and then you pass that to the other person, and the other person will work on that. So yeah, you have to think about the whole thing, which is when I was I think it's why I like choreographing, because when I was a dancer, even though just being a dancer, I was always aware of all those things, and all those things matter to me. So.
But you're coming up with them when you're the
But when you are the
choreographer.
choreographer,
Yeah.
you were coming up with them. Yeah.
So do you have a process for generating ideas, or when you're choreographing a new piece, how do you begin?
So you begin with the idea mainly, because normally you have to tell what is your idea for whoever you are choreographing. Sometimes the company you are doing the work, that never happened to me. They come with the idea they want, and
They
then
have a theme or something.
A theme, and then you do on top of that. But the works I've done, I had to come with the idea. So for me, that's the hardest part. Actually, because like, what do you want to talk about? Like, what do you bring that it's new? Like, is there anything still new there to talk about? So I feel that's, for me, it's the hardest part. Also to bring in words what I want to talk about on stage. And then after that, I feel once I get in the studio, always also depends with timing, how much time you have with the dancers. I love the process that the dancers go through improvisation, and then through that we find out like new things to do. But sometimes, like the last piece I made, I had to do 10 minutes of dance in 3 days, 3 hours a day. So there was no time to go like through improvisation, so I had to come with all the material. So it really depends, like what is the time you have to do it. But my favorite is when you have time for the research.
So when you have everything planned out and you're going to teach it to the dancers, how do you have it written out? I mean, like a piece of music has a score, right? Do you have like a list of moves?
Yeah, so also depends. For example, when I had a long process, I had 2 last pieces I made. One was a long process, one on the short. On the long process, I didn't even have the music. The music was created together with the piece. As I was developing material, like just with the ideas, I brought first the idea, shared with the dancers, and then through the process we started like making material together. And from that material, I was working with the musician, and then he was composing on top of that.
Okay.
So it was like, and then sometimes he would give me a piece of music, and then I would work on that. So for me, always depends the timing. The last time we had, because it was only 3 days, I had the whole music ready. So I came with the music, and I came with a couple of ideas that I wanted, like visually ideas. And then, yeah, I came with a lot of movements. First, I just threw all the movements on the dancers. And then once I see how that is working, and I'm working that on space on the studio, I record everything. I come home. and then I see like, oh, this goes best here or there in the music. And so I work a lot with recording and throwing on the computer and checking like how, if it goes better in the beginning, in the end, and how that goes.
And you're talking about the piece that I saw, right?
No, the piece that you saw was the long process.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a longer process. We had a couple of months to do it, like not like the whole month, but we started and then we had a break and then back because we were working with other choreographers. But that I had a little bit more time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I really enjoyed that. It was fun. Yeah. And yeah, the costumes in yours were really fun too.
Yeah, so for the costumes, that was a fun because people were also asking me about the costume. It was also because of the budget. We didn't have much budget, so that's why I came to the costume. But in the end, I really liked the costume because it was like I really wanted something to show their bodies, but also like not show the bodies, so the transparency and then like the material.
Yeah, so they were wearing like a transparent raincoat, basically, and then they had some lights.
And then they had lights in the hands, yes. And then the dancers suffered because dancing
hot underneath
30 minutes piece with a plastic on top of you, it's suffering.
Well, that's something I wanted to talk about with you too. So because dancing is so physically taxing and challenging, how do you keep your body in dancing condition? And do you do other types of exercise, or what kind of disciplines do you have to follow?
I'm a really bad example of that. First, because I hate gym. I hate going to the gym. Now it's what I do. Sometimes I go to the gym. I think throughout my career, I did different things. Basically, like, also now it's the first time that I work in a company that it's not every day. So I think it's also why I'm dealing like with that differently, because before I would work like 6 hours a day. And then basically if I would do something else was depending on the work you're doing, you go to the gym just like to make a part of your body more stronger. Or basically I would do more yoga just for stretching. That's what I did mostly. Because after 6 hours a day, you don't want to do much.
Yeah, right.
Just rest. And I feel now I'm like working less days because this company I work, it's not every day. So then I think I'm trying to figure out that gym. I think it's mostly being active all the time. I do check a little bit what I eat. Like I'm not like paranoid about what I'm eating, but I'm aware of what I'm eating.
Yeah.
If I say it like that. Yeah.
Right.
Especially because I'm older now. So.
Right. Yeah. It definitely makes a difference. You have to be careful of how many brigadeiros.
I know.
As a choreographer, what do you look for in a dancer? What's your, ideal dancer?
My ideal dancer in terms of technique, it's a versatile dancer that he can like go from different ranges of technique. But mainly, I think what I look in a dancer is their vulnerability. Because I feel like just technical dancers, you have like tons of technical dancers that they can do everything. But for me, it's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the extra that it's like presence on stage, and it's like when the dancer can be vulnerable.
Like emotionally?
Emotionally, it's emotionally, but it's not just like about, I don't want the dancer coming and crying, it's not that.
Oh, right.
But it's like the dancer that it's able to go to places that it's not only dance, it's almost like an actor also. Like, so I think that's what I look mostly in a dancer. I used to say that I only see a good dancer when the dancer makes a mistake. Because however the dancer solves that mistake on stage or on a rehearsal, during the rehearsal, I know if the dancer, if it's a good dancer for my standards of what is good dancer, right?
Which are the highest standards.
No, but like, it's the dancer, I'm not gonna put a good or a bad dancer, a dancer that I would like to work with. It's depending how they solve that mistake, I see like, oh, I really want to work with that dancer, and depending how they solve, I'm like, oh, okay, like they can't solve that.
Sure. Yeah, so some
That makes
dancers are
sense.
good for some pieces and maybe not for others.
Yes,
So they're
absolutely,
not
yeah.
necessarily good or bad.
Yeah.
It's what they
Yeah.
are right for, maybe, or
And I think I learned that in my career. I did like probably more than 50 auditions throughout my life, and I got a lot of no's, especially before the first yes. And before, you always think like, oh, I'm such a bad dancer. And then once you are more there, you understand that sometimes the choreographer or the director of that company, they're not gonna even look at you. And it's not because you're bad, it's because you are not the type of person they're looking for. Maybe they want a shorter person, a taller one, maybe they need one with hair, without hair. So there are so many things before your dance, your real dance, that are involved on the selection of people. Like how you enter the space, how is your energy in that day. So it's so many things, or like if they knew you before you were there in that audition. So I believe that it's not about being a bad dancer or a good dancer, although we do have bad dancers.
sure. They're out there.
We have to say that we do have bad dancers.
What about the emotional part of it? You're looking for, or you mentioned the emotion, right? Is that something that's teachable?
It is. I feel like emotion is teachable, presence on a stage is teachable. I think we can learn everything. I believe creativity you can teach to be creative, which is through practice. I think you practice everything. So, yeah, I think you can teach those things. I do think the big mistake of a dancer, in my perspective, is that they think they have to be so perfect that they forget that sometimes it's not what we want to see. Because I don't think when we go to watch a performance, and that's what I think, the dancer that captures my attention, it's never the best dancer, the one that is just doing the best moves.
Like technically proficient?
Because they have to have something extra on that thing, you know, like that's what catches our attention. And normally, because we are humans, what catches our attention, it's when they fail on something or when they're vulnerable. I feel that like whenever I'm watching a performance, there is something that it's more that we can relate to, because otherwise it's just like a spectacle. I don't know how to say this word, spectacular in Portuguese.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And you are teaching as well, right?
I am teaching as well.
So you dance, choreograph, and teach.
Yes.
What are the challenges of teaching for you?
I feel the biggest challenge of teaching, which is the same as choreographing for me, it's to understand that the dancer is not you. And that you want that dancer to be as better as they can, but you cannot project yourself on them. I think that's, for me, it's the biggest challenge, because sometimes, and I work with people that way, that they have so much projections that they can't really help the person to be better because they just want to throw things on them. So that's, for me, is the first biggest challenge. The second biggest challenge for me is to work with kids. I can't do that. So I tried for 1 year, I quit.
What was difficult about that? Because I taught kids too, I can relate to that.
For me, it was their age. I do feel mainly the language, because I was teaching in English and I didn't know much like how to navigate the language, because they were like almost teenagers, and I was like, so I could not use like adult language with them, but also not kids language. I think that's, for me, was the hardest one, and how to control them. Oh my God, they are crazy.
How big of a class would you have? How
It
many
was
kids?
only 6, but it seemed there were 40. But I do love teaching professionals. I do love teaching professionals, because or like pre-professional dancers. But I always knew that. I always said, if I'm ever to teach, I only want to teach people that really want to be dancers.
So these, the younger students, what was their goal? Were they just doing like an after-school class, or did they want to become dancers? They were thinking about
They
it?
are
Or-
so young.
Yeah.
They are in a school that they take a lot of classes, but it's not like that. They are in Bolshoi. It's not like that.
Right.
They are not. So it's like an after class. It's an after school class. And of course, some of them, they will probably want to pursue the career. But yeah, it was hard.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the language. They do have sort of an in-between language. You want to respect them,
Yeah.
but also connect with them,
Yeah.
and you don't want to talk down to them by using language below their
Yeah.
level of intelligence. That would be a challenge. So what are there other kinds of adjustments you've had to make living here, or any like culture shock experiences that you had moving to the US?
I think the biggest culture shock I have working here as a dancer is the age. I am old here, it seems like. Which is, now I think after 2 years I understand, like it's my point of view of why that happens. But I think the biggest shock was all the dancers I work with, they are mainly on their early 20s. Which is very shocking for me, because like in the companies I worked in Brazil, I wasn't the oldest one. Like people were older and they're still working, they're over 40, and they are like, they have like these beautiful careers, and they are working hard still. And here, like people are like, when they get to this 27, 28, it's kind of they're dropping out, unless they are in a really big company.
And do you have any theory on why that is?
My theory is we do not get paid well here in the United States of America. So then like who can like handle that, like I am 36. Since I moved here, it's the first time in my life that I have to work with something else other than dance or art, because just dance and art is not enough. So that doesn't make sense.
That's a common story in the arts, though, here.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So I understand if you are like young, and then you have like when you are 27 and you cannot make your living, you have to make a choice. It's like, oh, do I really want to do this for my entire life? And I feel most of people, they don't. So then they change their career. I feel a lot of them just become teachers. Like, of course we do have older people dancing, but I feel it's hard. Like, it's hard.
It's not fair.
I know.
So, whose work do you admire? Who are your influences? Who do you like right now?
So I admire a lot of people's work. I really like, they are mostly European choreographers. I feel it's also tough because in Brazil, I did study in Europe, but also I feel in Brazil, our education in dance, it's mainly rooted in European dance. So I love Joan Bourgois work, Dimitris Papayanou, he's a Greek guy. I really like Akram Kam's work. Ekman, I don't know, there are so many European choreographers that now they're flying out of my mind that I really like the work, but I also really like their work because they have so much money, so they have so much investment coming.
Yeah.
So like when you see their work, like Joan Bourgois, he works like with these huge platforms that it's turning on a stage, and so like it's so much money invested that you can create so much with that, and they have a lot of time to create things. So I think it's why I admire their work, but I know there are a lot more involved helping their creativity to come out. And I also really like work of Brazilian people, of course. And I think the one I most appreciate in Brazil, it's Alex Soares, which is the choreographer who worked in São Paulo. I think his work, it's like he's a really smart guy, and his work is really amazing and keeps like growing. Like, so yeah.
Okay, that's good. I have some names to Google, so I don't know any of those people. What do you have coming up? Are you working on something right now?
So now I'm just working as a dancer for this next month in the company I dance here, which is Hedwig Dances. And then in September, end of September, I'm choreographing again for young company of Ruth Page. It's the training company of Ruth Page, which I'm excited for. And then I'm just waiting for all the applications I sent for grants and choreographing. So yeah.
That's a tough part of the business, right? How much time do you spend like researching and applying and all that?
A lot. I think it's a lot of hours. I think first you come with different ideas because like every time I apply to choreograph or for a grant, I have to come up with a new idea.
Right.
So first is to come with the idea, then is to write. Like every grant or choreography application, it's a different way to apply, so I have to write all those, and on top it's in English. So I do write in English, but then I have to review everything to make sure I'm writing it correctly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of time.
Can you kind of file ideas though and come back to them? Do you ever use
I
recycle a little bit?
I mean, I do a little bit that, like I have the ideas and I kind of save them, but we are talking about a lot. It's like if I send 10 applications to choreograph and then plus like grants, it's like, I don't know how many ideas one can have, you know, like good ideas, because of course you can have ideas, but like good ideas that people will
respond to.
Yeah. So yeah, that's hard.
Yeah.
And then of course, once I don't get a grant or an application, I can also take that idea that wasn't accepted and kind of modify it or use the same for another thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you know about Canada?
I know not much. I've never been in Canada.
You've never been? But
No.
we're close to Canada.
Yeah, I do want to go to Canada, yes.
You're probably closer than you've ever been
I know.
to Canada in your life. And
well,
maybe,
no, I've been to Detroit,
oh, yeah.
so I've been closer.
Yeah. Well, let's test then your knowledge of Canada.
Okay.
I'm sure that proximity has given you more Canadian knowledge than even you think.
Okay.
So let's see how you do. This is a segment I do with every guest. That's called Canadian Trivia.
Okay.
All right, you feeling confident?
No, but let's go.
Okay, question one. What is Canada's national sport during the winter?
Ice hockey.
You're correct. Yeah, 1 for 1.
Okay.
Maybe you know more about Canada than you thought. Question 2. Canada experiences 4 different seasons in one calendar year. What are those 4 seasons called?
Spring, summer, fall, and winter.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And I would have also accepted autumn
Okay.
instead of fall. All right, 2 for 2. Good start.
Okay.
The Four Seasons is a Canadian luxury hotel and resort company headquartered in which country?
Canada.
That's correct, yeah. Have you stayed at a Four Seasons?
No.
Oh, I recommend it. I recommend it. It's an excellent hotel. All
They
right.
sponsor you.
Well, if they want to, yeah, I would take some free hotel rooms.
Four Seasons.
Question 4. Canada produces 85% of the world's supply of what food item?
I would say maple syrup.
Aha. And if you said that, you would be correct. You are correct. 4 for 4.
Okay.
So this question,
Last.
final question, this is for all the maple syrup. How much of the world's supply of maple syrup does Canada provide?
85%.
You're correct. Are you sure you haven't been to Canada?
Yeah, I'm sure. Those are hard questions.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you. Do you want to leave? I'll give you the final word if you want to say something to the viewers, or you could compliment me on what a great job I did, hosting this.
Well,
you can thank me for whatever you want to say.
Thank you for inviting me for the podcast, James.
Well, thank you for being a guest.
You did a great job.
So did you.
Thank you for coming to my performance. That's the most important.
Oh yeah, I was really happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great show. Really enjoyed it.
People support the arts. Mm-hmm. That's all I have to say.
And we can cut there. Perfect. I hope we didn't go past your time limit. Oh no, it's only 9:50.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, I forgot to hit the record button.
For real?
No.
Oh my God.